Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now to Ethiopia, where there have been victory celebrations in Mekele, capital of Tigray in the northern region, after rebel forces captured it in a rapid offensive. Fighting in Tigray for the last 8 months has caused a humanitarian disaster. But after recent clashes with Ethiopian government forces, it seems that Mekele is back in the hands of Tigrayan fighters, prompting street celebrations. A spokesman for the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, said the Ethiopian army had suffered a devastating defeat and that the changed situation meant international agencies could now bring urgently needed aid into Tigray. The Ethiopian government has declared a unilateral ceasefire in the region, but the rebels appear to have rejected a truce. Well, to give us a sense of the current situation in Tigray, I'm joined now by the Ethiopian academician, author and lecturer, Dr. Awol Allo. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Allo, for joining us. Just tell us more about what you're hearing from Tigray. Has the Ethiopian Federal Army been effectively defeated there, as is being reported?
Well, the position of the Ethiopian government, the public statements and the media briefings by the authorities suggest that the federal authorities decided to withdraw because they wanted to give the humanitarian crisis more urgent focus and attention. But I think it's very clear that there is no way that any state would declare an unconditional and immediate ceasefire while its troops are retreating from a regional capital that until very recently they captured, and they said they would not negotiate in any way with the Tigray Defense Forces. They even went as far as declaring the forces terrorists. So for a government that ruled out any negotiation to very quickly declare a ceasefire while its troops are withdrawing from the region, I think that signals a very radical change. I think for the Tigray Defense Forces to be able to push out two national armies, Eritrean armies and Ethiopian armies, alongside the militia that are fighting with them, I think that is a significant political and military achievement.
So, I mean, let's just be clear, Dr. Allo, when Addis Ababa says a ceasefire has come into effect immediately, you're saying that this is something that you don't believe that they discussed with the TPLF or the troops loyal to the TPLF?
No, not at all. I think the government's position is that this is a unilateral ceasefire. So it's very clear that there is no discussion, there is no negotiation with Tigray Defense Forces. So in terms of what the Ethiopian government is saying, they are not accepting that its forces have been defeated, but that they withdrew because the interim regional government of Tigray requested a ceasefire so that the humanitarian situation in the country can be addressed. But in reality, what we see is the Ethiopian National Defense Forces and the Eritrean forces basically withdrawing because they have been militarily defeated in Tigray.
But even if they've lost Mekele, which it does appear as though they have, don't they still control other parts of Tigray, or have they withdrawn completely from the province, from what you're hearing?
Yeah, I think they are still in control of certain territories. The report we have been hearing today suggests that Eritrean troops withdrew from the northern cities of Tigray, such as Aksum, Shire, and Adigrat, and those are very strategic cities in this war and areas that have been under mainly Eritrean control, but some areas of these cities were also controlled by Ethiopian troops. So if that news is true, and I think the other part is the southern part of Tigray on the border with the Amhara regional state. Those were territories that the Amhara regional government have been claiming, and they have actually asserted control over those territories. The question now, which we don't know so far, is whether the Eritrean forces, the Amhara forces, still control those parts of Tigray. There are also reports that on the Western Front there has been fighting yesterday, and that Humera has been captured. This is an area that borders Tigray with Sudan, a very important part of Tigray that gives it the only access to the world. So there are still, I think, parts that are under Ethiopian control, but given the speed with which the Tigray Defense Forces have been able to mobilize, it's very difficult to see how the Amhara regional forces would be able to hold on to those territories.
And this unilateral ceasefire that you talk about, does that suggest that there may be willingness to engage in any type of political dialogue?
Well, I think at this point they have to, although the federal government, since this war started, rejected the possibility of negotiation with Tigray Defense Forces, with the ruling party that governed that region. At one point, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia described the TPLF as a flower that is scattered in the wind, basically suggesting that they are gone and they will never come back, and suggestions of a negotiation with them is simply meaningless. Now they have asserted and they have shown that they are actually very robust forces, and the Prime Minister really doesn't have any other option other than negotiating with them. Once we have retreated from the regional capital, losing the territory, and declared a unilateral ceasefire, and there is significant pressure on the part of the international community, it's very difficult to see what tactic the Prime Minister is using other than accepting defeat and hopefully moving forward to bring about a negotiated solution to this crisis.
So does that mean that it would be unwise at this point to expect a rapid improvement in the humanitarian situation in Tigray, which is said to be pretty bad?
I think if the news that the Eritrean troops in the northern part have withdrawn is true, and if the Ethiopian National Defense Forces have withdrawn, the only force that seems to have left in the region is the Amhara regional forces. And I think it's very likely that those forces too would be forced to leave Tigray. And I think if that happens, then Tigray would be under the control of the Tigray Defense Forces, and I can't see how the Tigray Defense Forces would have difficulty letting in humanitarian assistance insofar as the international community is willing and able to do that. And also, of course, insofar as the Ethiopian Federal Government, that is still responsible for the country, allows humanitarian aid to go in. And I'm very hopeful that the humanitarian situation has a very good prospect of being addressed now.
And given all that you know about Ethiopia, and you are an Ethiopian yourself, you've got contacts all over the country, you're an academic, you're a lecturer, you're an analyst. Can this be said to be a turning point in the crisis in northern Ethiopia, in Tigray?
I think it is very difficult to rule out the possibility of a resurgence of conflict, because the situation in the country is so explosive, and the rivalry between the different groups and the hatred is so deep. And this war has further deepened and entrenched the animosity between the various groups in the country. And I think unless the international community, friends of Ethiopians and the Tigrayans and Eritreans, intervene to assist a peaceful resolution to the crisis, it's very difficult to rule out the resurgence of violence and conflict. And it's very difficult, given how deep the polarization is. It's very difficult to see how these two forces could come together for a peaceful resolution as well. So international support is very, very critical.
Right. Dr. Awol Allo, I want to thank you very much indeed. And he is, of course, the Ethiopian author and lecturer. and he was talking to me there from London.